Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to Healthy Habits for a Healthier Home. I'm here to help you create a healthier life, one simple shift at a time. If you're a mama ready to ditch toxins, clean up your family's nutrition, and build daily habits that support your well-being, you're definitely in the right place. Each episode is packed not only with education, but practical tips and tools to help you transform your health and your home without that feeling of overwhelm. So let's take this journey together to create a thriving, low-tox home for you and your family. If you're ready, say, I am ready. Now let's get into this episode. Hey guys, welcome back. I'm super excited to be introducing you today to Melissa. Welcome, Melissa. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that we met, and I think we're both passionate about some similar things. So if you would tell everybody kind of how you got started and what led you to create your brand, and then I want everybody to get to know who you are, kind of like I did.
Thank you. Well, I did found Melavie, which is a lifestyle and wellness brand, and it's really dedicated to empower women through mindset and movement resources towards intentional living and cultivating a body that feels like home. But before that, I was a person that always struggled with her weight, with her body image, with body shame. I was constantly comparing myself to others, always on a diet, always trying to lose weight, picking apart my body, always like striving for perfection because I felt like in order to be happy in life or to have the partner that I wanted, I needed to look a certain way. And I basically like rode my health like a seesaw. I would punish it for eating pizza or McDonald's by doing excessive cardio, and then I would stop eating, but then I would, overeat. And it was just kind of like a roller coaster. And I always wondered like why I was staying the same. And it honestly wasn't until I began digging into the Word of God and reading what His Word has to say about our bodies. And it's so beautiful. He calls it, His temple. Like we were made in His image. We're, fearfully, wonderfully made. And it wasn't until I began seeing myself through the eyes of God and the words that He described for my body that I began to change my relationship with my body. I realized that your mind and your body and your soul are all interconnected. So you can't hate your body and then love your mind and your soul. If one is affected, then they all are. And that was really where my work began to kind of heal my relationship with my body, to start treating myself with love and respect just because I felt that I was worthy of it. Because as a human being, we're all worthy of love and respect, no matter how many mistakes you made, no matter what you look like, you're still worthy of love and respect as a human being. And it was from this place of like love and respect for my body that I began to show up more consistently, that I began to exercise and eat healthy and move my body more consistently out of love and respect for it, just to take care of it. So that way I could continue to live the life that I wanted to live. And that was really where I ultimately decided to start Melavie, because I saw the transformation that the mindset or the change in the relationship or the labeling of what exercise or, healthy eating and living, when I changed that mindset around it and my relationship with it, that's when everything kind of fell into place. And it was so transformative for myself that I decided to start a wellness brand that could help women also cultivate that self-love that's so needed nowadays.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story, and that was super authentic, and I love it because I know that all of the listeners listening, whatever age you're at some point in your life, we've all questioned things. We've all had self-doubt. We've all, what if, how can I create my body like that? Why do I have this when this? We all have those things that we ebb and flow through. And sadly, I feel like a lot of it is societal, right? Because we are shown the Barbie. We are shown, that you have to be on a diet in order to, or you have to feel like deprivation in order to look a certain way. It comes through the marketing. And so how everything was marketed to us and, all the things we saw and heard. And then we start, you start creating stories in your mind, and those stories just deafens everything. And it's so much noise coming at you in all directions from, eat this way, get rid of this whole entire food group, work out hardcore, all the things, right? Take this diet pill, do this thing. And what's not happening there is what do you need? What does your body need? What does your mind need? Because everybody is coming from such different places. And so that is why I truly feel like things like diets and withdrawing an entire food group, why that doesn't really help people to become their healthiest version, because it's still got that sabotage feeling to it, right? Because you're restricting yourself so much from something, but you're disconnecting. And that's what I love what you just said about the mind, body, and the soul. When you're only working on one area, and in that area, all you're doing is restricting, and creating boundaries and things, you're so disconnected from self, which then makes you so disconnected from the other parts that you really need to feel whole. And so, as you said, the word of God says it differently, right? And so why are we not saying that more often? We are wonderfully made. Not because you're a size 2. You're wonderfully made because God made you that way, because you have a purpose here on earth. But that gets kind of like muffled out, I think. So I'm so glad you brought that up.
Thank you. No, it's so true. Body shame, like you said before, is not your fault. We weren't born hating our bodies,
No.
and shame actually, I really honestly feel like God never intended us to live in shame. Shame didn't come into the picture until sin did. Like Adam and Eve were completely naked in the garden, and it wasn't until they sinned that they suddenly felt shame for their bodies. And body shame is not your fault, but we were told through the marketing, like you said, that, I mean, if you think about it, like when I was growing up, like everybody that looked happy on TV and the movies and the shows were always tiny, slender. And now we know that even the most beautiful people in this world are sometimes the most unhappiest. So it's all a marketing. We've been told this lie that, like, in order to have the perfect relationship, the marriage, the career, that you needed to fit or look a certain part. And now I feel like we're getting to this point where we're realizing that's a lie, but now we have to do the inner work of reframing all that lies. The first step to change is becoming aware of the stories that you've been telling yourself, the stories that society and your family, like her friends, no matter how well-meaning they might be, they've also had a part to play in how you feel about your body.
And I totally agree. And, the first thing I do when I work with people is, we look at their story. You have to look at your health and wellness story, because that is what creates the awareness, right? You have to remember, we live very unintentionally. We just keep going. We're plowing through life. We're not really thinking about things and creating that intention to start thinking about things. And what was your story growing up? Did you come from a dieting family? Did you come from, a mom that if you didn't look a certain way, she had something to say? And even though in her mind it wasn't negative, it could have stuck with us negative. So many things play into it, but we have forgotten those things because we've just suppressed them and kept moving on. And so I do believe, just like you, like going back and revisiting that story, which I think a lot can be done during quiet time, during journaling, things where you can really get quiet within. And it's a scary thing sometimes to get started that way, but it's much needed, because you have to know what has transpired previous to then be able to say, how is that serving me now? Or is it serving me now? Or is that truth? Right? Was that really truth? Or was that something that was just put upon me that I just took and added it to my stories? Right. And so I think as you come into this adulthood, the most empowering thing is we have the choice to change that story, which I find to be, the most empowering thing that we can do for ourselves is create what we want our story to look like, minus the things that were put upon us from 0 to 12. Because 0 to 12, you're just a sponge and you're just absorbing and you're just absorbing. But you're absorbing and storing. You're absorbing and storing. And then you don't know why. Why do I act like that? Well, if you can get quiet and look back, there is something that will happen that will come up, like why you do that. And again, I think it's just so important that we give ourselves the space. And I think that, like you said, awareness is definitely the key to starting a transformation. But with that, it has nothing to do with body size. It has nothing to do with, your color of your hair. It has not, like, those things don't define how you feel inside. We've made it that way, but we need to kind of undo those things and unlayer them so that we can, again, start creating our own story that we want to live in this next chapter, whatever chapter you're in. So again, this is a very important topic and something that's near and dear to me, because as women, wherever you are on your journey, there comes a point where this stuff starts to resurface. So whether you like it or not, you can deal with it earlier, or you can wait and it will come up at this time. And sometimes it does both, right? So what led you to want to create your journal? Because I love that you did that.
I was going through my own journey, and I realized that even though body shame was not my fault, I still held the power. And I got to decide what beliefs that I agreed with and which I did not. And I wanted to change the narrative. So again, I was doing a lot of the internal work. I was reading the books, listening to the podcasts, doing a lot of research, and again, taking the time to give myself the space to reflect on like what are the lies that I've been telling myself, and how do I want to like live more intentionally, and how do I want to, I feel like the best way to make exercise or healthy living or a part of your life is if you treat it as like love and respect for yourself,
100%.
Yes, and you don't treat it as like punishment and restriction. And I realized that a lot of the times the reason why I stopped or I was so inconsistent all my life was because I saw exercise as a punishment. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I boxed up exercise into this small, narrow box. Like for me, back then, exercise meant lots of cardio that I hated. Like healthy living meant measuring my food, weighing it, restriction. And it wasn't until I cut the word exercise and started embracing movement, and it could be all forms of movement, whether it was bike riding, yoga, running, lifting, swimming, whatever I wanted to do. That movement is a privilege because, as you age, your body changes. Movement is not guaranteed throughout your entire life. I work in healthcare, so I work with a lot of different people at different ages and everything. And, movement, like accidents happen. And it wasn't until I realized that like there's some people out there that unfortunately can't move, and they would give anything just to be able to take themselves to the bathroom. And here I am complaining about my legs because it has cellulite.
Yeah.
And that's when I felt like when I
That's
changed
the
my
mindset shift.
yes,
That's
like
where that, like, oh, okay.
I saw movement as like a celebration, as like an appreciation for my body could do. And I saw how, and I felt eating as like, eating more good food that gave me the energy to actually like go about my day and work on my dreams. So I started doing that for myself. And I realized that like, wow, this is transforming my relationship with like exercise and, healthy living. What if I create a journal where women can find their profound why, the reason why they even want to change the relationship with their body, and health as a whole, where they could set goals with intention, where they can work on reframing their mindset around what exercise looks like, what healthy living works like, surrender any self-limiting beliefs that they may have, surrender any fears that they may have, but also like tracking and like writing down how they're moving each day, so it's like a space where you could reframe your mindset, but also like write down what you're grateful for, how you're moving that day, any affirmations, any like goals or ways that you want to improve upon the next day and the next week. So it's a very intentional journal. And I felt like that was something that I was looking for when I was going through my own journey. And I created it so that way, as other women want to go through their own journey, they have like a guide to kind of help them approach exercise and healthy living more intentionally from a place of love and respect for themselves.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I love how you keep saying love and respect, because that is the key to change. Having respect for your wellness shifts your mindset, because it's not, yes, it's all things in moderation. I mean, you hear that a lot, but what is moderation to you? What are you doing to care for yourself? So to me, it's disrespectful when you are not putting any intention on what it is that you are eating or not eating. And yes, there are so many things that we have at our fingertips that are unhealthy, but we also have a choice to switch that, because we also have a lot of foods that are extremely healthy. And it's just about, again, there's some basics, right? There's basics of knowing ingredients. There's basics of understanding how your body responds to food. And
Mhm.
again, that's self-love. When you eat something and you do not feel good and you continue to still eat something, is that really respecting yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And it's again giving you the space and the time to actually tune into those signals. Like your body is very, very intelligent. Like
100%.
it will speak to you and it will tell you what's good for you and what's not good for you. But a lot of times, like you said, like we're so busy, we're always going, 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 that you don't really take the time to actually see like what foods work well for you, which ones give you energy, which ones drain your energy, which ones upset your stomach, and which one do not. So really giving yourself grace and the time to kind of like understand your body, because all the bodies are so different. So what works well for me at my age right now might not work well for you.
100%.
And
Yeah.
it's giving yourself the grace that like just because this person is saying this is what works well for you and doesn't work for you doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that your bodies are different. So you
Mhm.
have to like find what is going to work for you.
Yeah. And also it depends on where your body's at. If you have high inflammation, if you don't, if you have gut issues, if you don't, I mean, there's tons of things. And once you're healed, like once you heal like your insides and you're more stable and balanced and all of that, sometimes you can have something that maybe affected you a long time ago. It doesn't affect you anymore because your body's like, I don't like that. I can process it and get rid of it. It's not kind of like building up in the system. But one of the things that I often hear is, I don't have time. I don't have time to move my body consistently. I don't have time to food prep. I don't have time to have quiet. I don't have a self-care routine because I don't have time. And I think that's probably one of my favorite sentences or questions or statements or anything that somebody makes, because we all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all create the boundaries for ourselves. And I think for women, that's a thing. We don't
Mhm.
create boundaries to allow ourselves to have the space to care for ourselves. But
Mhm.
when it comes to like a morning routine, when people are like, I don't have time for one, but I'm like, okay, what do you do in the morning currently? Like, what, you get up, you look at your phone, you take a shower, you're looking at your emails, you're trying to eat breakfast, you're trying to get the kids out the door. You woke up, you put your feet on the ground and you just went. What if you didn't look at your emails and took those 3 to 5 minutes that it took you, and maybe you just have some positive thoughts that you tell yourself, positive
Mhm.
affirmations, whether you do a 5 4 3 2 1, whether you journal, whatever, take those 3 to 5 minutes and put a different thought in your mind, create
Mhm.
a different space. And
Mhm.
so then when you leave your room, right, to go out to meet your kids, to do whatever, hurry to work, you're coming from a different lens already
Mhm.
just by setting yourself up with that 3 to 5 minutes. We have conditioned ourselves to be accessible 24/7. And when I grew up, which I know we're different in age, but we didn't have cell phones at the beginning when I first started working. We just got up, we had our morning, we got ready for work, and then we drove to work. And then when you got to work, you had your things, whether it was a meeting first or your list of things to do from the day before. But you, like most of the time, checked it at the door, unless you brought something home, and then you just went back. And now it's like constant. It's constant being on constantly, which doesn't allow for space for somebody to pour into themselves. And that's a choice, though, that we get to make. If we set the expectation that we're going to respond to every text, every email instantaneously, then that's the expectation people are going to hold of you. But what if you changed that boundary, right? And you said, I'm only going to check my emails at the start of work, not when you first get out of bed, at the start of work, lunchtime, mid afternoon, and then right before you leave. And if you make people aware of that boundary, and it doesn't have to be harsh, it's just, hey, this is what, because I've got other things to do. Because I hear that a lot, like all I'm doing is answering all day, and then I have to do my actual work at night. Okay, well, let's change that.
Yeah.
Your work day is meant for you to be working. And if people are just, I'm guilty of this too. If something comes to my mind, I'm sending an email, even if it's 9 o'clock. I don't expect a response, but if I don't, I might forget to send it the next day because
Yeah.
my brain is in menopause, so it's like sometimes that happens. But my expectation is not to receive an email back. And a lot of times in my email, I'll say, please don't feel like you need to respond this evening. I'm just doing it while I'm thinking about it. Giving the person permission to not feel like, now I got to respond and it's my nighttime with my family, that kind of a thing. So letting people know your boundaries, like I am not available from this time to this time. You don't have to tell them why, but maybe that's the time you do self-care. You have to put it on your calendar. You have to make an intentional appointment with yourself sometimes.
You definitely have to live very intentionally. And I feel like I hear that excuse a lot, like, oh, I don't have time. And I think part of the reason is that I feel like maybe society or social media, or they paint the morning routine or the exercise routine to be this long, drawn out thing. Like, oh, this person wakes up, she does meditation for half an hour, she works out for an hour and a half, and then she does yoga. And it's like they paint like this morning routine to be this long, drastic. And obviously, when you look at it, you're like, I have a real job. I can't spend 2 hours on this long morning routine. And I think it takes one, being realistic with,
Mhm.
okay, what do I have time for? What can I make time for? What are the distractions? Because we all say that we don't have time, yet I'm pretty sure people are spending 20 minutes on emails, social media.
So I love to look at social media times. And I said, this is not to point fingers. This is really just to bring awareness because I'm guilty of it too. And sometimes I'll look and I'm like, wow, I wasted like 4 hours this week. That's crazy. Like, that's so stupid. Like I had so many much better things I could have been doing with 4 hours, but but during the week, I would have never thought it was 4 hours, right? It wasn't until I brought up my screen time and I was like, oh, okay.
Right, because it's usually like 20 minutes of times here and there. When you think about it, what helps me is that I don't have like a time frame that I have to exercise. I'm not like, oh, I have to work out an hour a day. My goal is like if I can just move intentionally, like be in my body, whether it's going for a walk or just doing some deep breathing or stretching or actually exercising. I put a goal of like at least 10 minutes a day. I'm just gonna like breathe and feel my body and just move it in a way that feels good to me. And some days it's a lot longer than those 10 minutes. I do a full workout. But if I don't have time for a full workout, I know that I'm still moving my body in some intentional way for 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes are better for me than 10 minutes on social media. And that's how I see it, is that make your goals small and achievable, and then you can build from there. Because we have the time if you're choosing to put your time in the correct spaces. And then if you're deleting things that are not really adding to the kind of person, the life that you want to live in the future.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is like, I think people don't want to make the time because like you said, it's a chore. It's not something, it's a negative thing. Like having to meal prep seems negative, right? It seems like a chore. It seems like I have to do this because I'm trying to get to this goal of losing some, and I also say, losing weight should be a reflection of the changes you make, not the goal. Like the goal should be, I want to feel more confident, and let's feel confident every day. And the byproduct of that will be your body will shift and change. Because if you're doing things that make you feel confident, right, that's going to include moving because it gives you a sense of confidence. And again, it's not saying go to the gym and bust it for an hour. It's take that very small, slow walk, just being with yourself. And also what I found, because movement is not my favorite. It was not, it is now, but it was not, because again, growing up, we were kind of taught you go to the gym, or it wasn't fun for me. Like I'm not a gym person. There are people who absolutely kill it and love it in the gym, and that's great for them. But for me, it was a chore. It was like, no, I got to go to the gym. I'm not going to go. If I'm only going to spend 20 minutes there and it takes me 10 minutes to drive, it's just not going to happen. And so I've given myself permission to remove that. Like I don't have to go to the gym. Like I can do it from home. I can do it outside. But what are the things I find enjoyable? And I think those are the questions. It's not what somebody says you should be doing. Like, what do you find enjoyable? What did you find enjoyable as a kid? I danced as a kid, so I enjoy bar. I'm not saying I'm a ballerina or I'm good. It's just something that
You enjoy.
makes me feel good,
Yeah.
and I really love yoga. And I love yoga not because I can do the pretzel and stand on my head and do all the crazy poses. For me, I connect my breath with my movement and it calms my nervous system. I mean, I look at my mat and it's like my body's like, oh, get over there and sit down because it's time to like relax. It's like, so, but that came with practice. But the more I did it for 10 minutes, and I started during COVID because we had nothing else to do. And I'm like, there's no excuse. I'm home and so I went on Peloton and I would do 5-minute yoga stretches and just very basic. I would never commit to 45 minutes. I was like, no, I'm just going to do 5 or I'll just do 10. But guess what? It was so enjoyable and it really made me feel good that I kept adding on. And so now I'll do yoga maybe for like 25 minutes, sometimes 45 sometimes, but if I only have to, and then I'll do a 5-minute ab because I'm already like, I'm getting my endorphin, I'm in a good space. So I think when you start loving something and how it makes you feel, you want to keep doing it. So it's not a chore anymore. It becomes part of your lifestyle.
Yeah. And just giving yourself grace too, because there's times also too that like I'm the same way. If like I don't want to work out or go to the gym, but I had that 10-minute rule. So sometimes I say that, okay, if I'm not feeling it after 10 minutes, I can just walk out and I can just go back home. And most of the time, once you start moving, you're like, oh, okay, I'm good. I'm actually fine, you know? And it's giving yourself grace to realize that you're not going to feel like getting up from the couch and stretching on the floor. You're not going to feel like going for a walk sometimes. But a lot of the times, like making the decision that like I choose to do something good for myself, my body, because I'm worthy of it, because it's what it needs. That's kind of like how you can make it stick too. Giving yourself like compassion too. I feel like a lot of the times, like when I was in the past, again, exercise was a punishment. And I always like, I spoke badly about, oh, I hate running. I hate this. I hate that. Giving yourself the compassion, be like, okay, like you're strong. You can do this. You know, speaking yourself like you would to your friend or your daughter or anybody else that's really important to you, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great. The other thing about the movement part of it is reframing, like for yourself, what feels good for you, you know, and not worrying about what Sally's doing, what, you know, because I think again, well, I want to look like that. So I'm going to do whatever she's doing. But what she's doing doesn't resonate with you. And one of the things I learned through schooling is from a holistic lens, you know, by mind, body, and soul, you can eat a certain way, but when your primary foods, that's everything off your plate that feeds your soul. If those are not in balance, so that could be movement, it could be career, it could be finances, it can be relationships where you find joy, spirituality. If none of those things are also being tended to intentionally, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're still not going to be your healthiest, most balanced self. It's not zooming in so hard on one particular thing. It's about kind of sprinkling it. Because again, then that takes the pressure off. Maybe you don't work out every day. Maybe you work out. Some people have the goal of every day they need to move their body to feel their best. And other people don't. They need to do it 3 times a week. You have to find that balance for yourself. So you don't start with a 7-day goal. You start with what feels right for you. What can you be successful at? Set yourself up for success rather than, once again, not meeting what you want to do and then playing that same tape in the head.
I love what you said, because it's really about being flexible with what that is. Like you said, like some people, there's times in my life where I could exercise every single day and I feel great. And there's other times where it's like if I do it 3 times a week, like I'm doing pretty good. It's like being flexible that every day and every season of your life is going to look differently. And that's okay because we're human. We're never supposed to stick to the same routine every single day. And I think that's where most people fall off, is that I'm a recovering perfectionist. So like before, I used to be really good for like a month and then have one bad week and then just fall off completely. And then it was all or nothing mentality. But now, like, if you give yourself grace, compassion, and whatever, if you don't work out for, you know, a week, then the next week just start with 1 day. And then you'll see that you'll be able to build upon like those habits little by little, but not being so strict and hard with yourself and painting healthy living as like all or nothing. You know, I love what you said about sprinkling things here and there and just watching how those habits will eventually build upon itself, and surrendering the timeline. Because a lot of people, also myself included, you know, we have like this mentality that it has to be done by summer, or it has to be done by winter, it has to be done
Because
by...
we were taught that when you create a goal, there has to be like an end line. And that's where I like to challenge that to more of what is the feeling you want to get from the goal that you think you want. And let's live that feeling. Let's find a way to express that feeling every day. Rather, why are we waiting until we get to summer? Why are we waiting until we get to the, you know, finish line? It's like, if you think you're going to feel more confident, if you think you're going to feel better, if you think you're going to have more energy, let's find ways to do that on a daily and see how that changes things, because it's, again, we've just been conditioned to have a strict, in order to be healthy, you have to have certain things in place. That's just a story, right? If you just do one thing at a time, and start just adding things in rather than restricting things, we all eat, right? We all eat 3 times a day. We all have snacks. We all, we're all doing the things, but the choices we have are, what are we eating at those meals? And why are we eating at those meals the way that we are eating? Do we stand up? Do we sit down? Do we take a breath? Are we on the go? Are we eating in the car? Like, if you look at different countries, they take hours to have lunch, and we're eating in 10 minutes. And most of the time we are working and eating. It's like, that's not really healthy, because your body's not being intentional about what it's putting in its mouth. You're not having time to, right. You're not having time to like smell it and like be in contact with your food, and enjoy it. You're just woofing it down to create a feel full feeling. And that's not really what food could be for somebody, I mean, that's the mindset shift stuff that I think people eventually discover as they start making these very small, and I call them 1% shifts, because you can't change something overnight. We didn't wake up with all of these stories. We didn't wake up eating a certain way. We kind of created that, and not to our fault either. We are in a society, and we are of a culture where we're looking for quick and easy things. People are adding substances, and I'm going to call them substances because they're not even real food, into processed foods to make them easier for us to make, but also make them very highly addictive and palatable, because we're going to want more of them. And so it's not our fault until we know better, right? And then once we know better, and knowing better meaning, what is in your food? What are you eating? If you're just making a plate and you're not even sure like what exactly is in the food, then that's your first step. If you're somebody who, eats a certain way, and eats pretty healthy, what foods can you add in? So I think, again, everybody's so bio individual that it really comes down to you creating what works for you. But it starts with your mind. And that's totally why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because until you can start shifting the thoughts to better thoughts and more serving thoughts and loving thoughts, and start to hone in on having respect for your health and wellness, it's going to be really hard to create what most people are looking for, which is a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, and I love what you said too about not waiting until like we were conditioned to have a timeline, to have like a strict timeline basically. And I love to say that we need to stop waiting on our weight. And a lot of the times like we put a timeline, when I'm this weight, then that's when I'm gonna go on the cruise and do this or into my life. Your life is happening whether you're doing anything or not. And it's like you can't fix an internal issue with an external solution. Like your body image.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, like your body image is an inside job. You are able to enjoy your life no matter what weight you're in. And I feel like changing that mindset, whereas in like I can't wait for my weight to be a certain thing in order to enjoy my life. What could you do today that's going to bring more joy to your life? What kinds of movements or food is going to bring more joy to my life every single day, and seek that enjoyment every single day. And then also realizing too that, whether your goal is to lose weight, I think attaching a purpose is what helps people the most. Like, okay, you lose a weight, right? What is that weight loss gonna open up for you? Does that mean that you're gonna have more energy to play around with your grandkids? Does it mean that you're gonna have the ability to travel more? Like what is it gonna open up for you? And then you'll realize that all like the movement and the work that you do inside is gonna be easier because you have a bigger picture in mind. You have like a certain, you know, like a lifestyle that you're trying to attain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for me, I mean, at this age, like when you're saying that, I mean, the first three things that pop up are I want to be moving when I'm 70 and 80 years old. I don't want to, at all possible, I don't want to be depending on a walker or falling or being unbalanced, and that's where those, balancing type movements come in. It's not to be a ballerina. It's really honestly to save you in the end. The other thing is I do want to get on the floor with my grandkids, and I want to be an example for my grandkids that you can create whatever it is that you desire. Having that purpose, that's not a goal. I think that's the difference between a goal An intention, a goal, and having a purpose. Intention meaning that you're aware, you place an intention on something you physically want to be doing. A goal is what we've been taught, which is to set a goal to meet something. But then a purpose is, it's so much greater than that. Like, why are you here? Like, what are we here to do? And why do you want to do that? And how do you want to do that? And that's our choice. And I think that's a beautiful thing that we get to do. So cultivating a home within. For somebody listening who has never maybe turned the lens in just quite yet, when we're talking about creating that home within, what are a couple of takeaways that somebody could walk away with today that would start them on a different path without that restrictive, mindset that they might have?
When I say cultivating a home within, I say that because so often we try to make a home for ourselves and other people and places, but those places unfortunately are temporary, because apart from God, you can't really depend on anyone else to make you feel happy, to make you feel loved, or to make you feel at home. The people in your life, your children, your partner, your friends, they will definitely add to that happiness. Ultimately, your happiness and your sense of worth is entirely up to you. And the only place that we are promised to have with us until the day we die is actually our bodies. Like, this is where we get to experience the life around us. That's why it's so important to start building a body that feels like home, because this is basically going to be where we're going to experience the life that we choose to live for the rest of our lives. And I think the first step to cultivating that is really through the everyday actions that we take. First, the step is becoming aware, just becoming aware of the thoughts and the words that you're saying to yourself, that you're describing to yourself, and realizing, okay, how would I talk to my daughter, to my best friend, to my mother? Like, how can I speak to myself more compassionately? Start with the words that you're speaking to yourself, and just tuning into how you are speaking to yourself. So that's like the first step. And I think the second one is just acting in love and not waiting until you feel love. Because a lot of times I find that people wait to be motivated to be good to themselves, if that makes sense. Like, but the way to actually feel is through your actions. Actions, how you behave is what will lead to the emotion of love. So even if you don't love yourself necessarily right now, what are some acts of love that you can do for yourself today? And that could just be taking a walk, or telling yourself that you love yourself, breathing intentionally, just what's a few ways, a few acts of love, whether it's like massage or doing that for yourself, that you could show yourself that love and respect, even if you're not feeling it in the moment. What are something that you can do that are small for yourself today?
I love that. And again, as everybody is walking away from today, I think those are tangible things. And one of the challenges I would love to give to everybody listening is in the morning when you're getting ready to look at yourself in the mirror and say something kind. It's going to be super uncomfortable. It really does. At the beginning, when you first start doing it, it seems odd, weird, because we've never been told that's a good thing to do, right? Not that it's a bad thing to do, but it's just not something that, most of us have been taught. I challenge you to, and if it's awkward to have the conversation, put some few stickies on your mirror of positive things that you could say. These could be acts of love, right? It could be something you say that's kind that you would say to your best friend, but say it to yourself. And start to feel through the uncomfortableness, and then start to notice when that shifts and when it starts to feel like, I'm just saying it because, and then when the belief starts to come in, when you start to believe it. So usually I feel like there's like three: first, very uncomfortable, then I can say it without feeling uncomfortable, and then it actually starts to really make a difference. There's no timeline for that, but just start with just one very small thing and see how it feels to you, and recognize when it starts to become something better than being uncomfortable.
Yeah. I always like to also like start with gratitude too. Like, there's always something, like, despite what our bodies may look like, there's always something to be grateful that our body allows us to do, whether it's like, oh, thank God I was able to go to the bathroom this morning. Like, God that
People take that for granted.
yeah, seriously. Thank God that I'm able to get myself dressed, or thank God that like these legs of mine, like, no matter what they look like, I'm still able to squat to pick things up, things like that. Or thank God I could feel like the water in the pool, like very
Yeah.
small things. I love to sprinkle gratitude throughout my day.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be like a full, like 10-minute,
Yeah.
it could literally just be, you know what, I'm grateful that I could go for a walk today. I'm grateful that my body, I could smell and taste this food. I can remember during COVID, sense of taste and smell. Like, how grateful are you now that you're able to actually enjoy the food? Sprinkling acts of gratitude throughout
Yeah.
the day.
Don't wait for it to be taken away before you see the gratitude. And just by you saying that yesterday, my daughter and I were doing something and she was getting into the complaining sort of like kind of, mentality that happens sometimes. And I just literally said, you just did that. You had your moment of like, let's switch it around. Okay. I'm so grateful that I get to pack. I'm so grateful that I get to organize. I'm so grateful that I'm getting to purge things that I no longer need because they don't serve me in the same way. Like, how that feels so much better than this is a chore. This is terrible. Like,
I
let it
want
get
to
in
do
the way.
it.
I don't want to do it right. But I was like, I'm happy doing this because I'm saying something different to myself, like I'm happy that you've outgrown things and that we're able to give them to somebody else who actually needs it. And one of the things to your point, pausing allows space. If we allow ourselves to pause, we can see things from a different lens. If you are complaining, if you're not showing gratitude for things, start training yourself in that moment, even if it's not a complaining moment, but like while you're in the pool, pause for a second. How can I create this moment to be greater than what it is? And that is by usually saying something that is, in gratitude of whatever. You're doing laundry. It's not the greatest task in the world, but what is good about it? You have clothes, you're folding it for someone you love or yourself, which you should be loving yourself. You're blessed that you can have clothing, that you're whatever it is. There's always something to be grateful for, but we skip over that.
Yeah.
We don't even recognize that it's a thing to stop and be thankful for.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So good. In the show notes, you guys, I'm going to put the link to your journal and your social media and things like that and you should follow her social media. It's great. It's so uplifting. It's raw and real. I like those accounts. I like those accounts where people are coming in their rawest version because we are all the same. We all have certain things that we are going through. And if one person can say something authentically that can affect somebody in a good way, I feel like that's why everybody is put on the earth, is to serve somebody in a way, to help somebody else grow. So definitely follow. Before we go, though, I do like to ask for, through your journey, which it's been an amazing journey. And with every challenge, I always say there are, opportunities for growth. And you definitely have flipped that and created a lot of growth out of some challenges that you had earlier on. But now where you're sitting today, what are a few non-negotiables you've created for yourself on a daily that helps you to feel your best?
I would say for sure, lead with love. In everything that I do, whether it's through social media or in my home with my friends, always lead with love. There's so much hate and so much going on in this world that the only way to make the world a better place is honestly through acts of love. So in everything that I do, lead with love and compassion towards myself. Um, Also grace over guilt. So giving myself grace and the space to make mistakes, to learn with time, and to refrain from feeling guilty for things that I may not do perfectly or things like that. So grace over guilt for sure. So lead with love and grace of guilt.
I love those. Those should be on hats. I'm gonna have to
Grace
send that
over
to our
guilt, I know.
friend.
Oh, and then I also want to say that I do want to give your listeners 20% off of the journal if anyone is interested in checking it out. I think I'm gonna go ahead and make a code.
I'll drop that
Live,
into the show notes.
yeah, it'll be Live Life 20.
I will put it in the show notes if you're driving. I don't want anybody to be writing while you're driving, or
Perfect.
walking or spending time with yourself. Thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciated your really authentic conversation, but also all the tools and tips that you've given us to create 1% shifts this week. I believe that everybody has the power to create at least 1%. step forward. And these are why I have these conversations, because we all need to hear from different people to find what works for us to take those first steps. And when those first steps seem challenging, reach out. That's why we're here. We've created communities. Each person I speak with has a community. I always have a community, obviously, but I think being in community with people that are trying to pursue some of the same things is super helpful, because it's really supportive, and finding those supportive people helps keep you going, and to remember, and I think being reminded of what you're doing and why you're doing it is often helpful and sometimes we can't see through that. So having somebody, whether it's a guide, a friend, whatever, just to be there as that support and reminder helps you to keep going on the journey.
Absolutely. We're not supposed to do life alone. We
No.
weren't put on the earth to do anything alone. So definitely community and finding other friends who are going through this journey with you is definitely something that will make it a lot more easier and actually enjoyable.
Yeah. Because again, it's not supposed to be like tasks, right? It's supposed to be just enjoying a lifestyle that brings you energy and health and wellness, so that you can live out a good life. So thank you guys for tuning in today, and I will see y'all next week. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye. Thank you.
Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to Healthy Habits for a Healthier Home. I'm here to help you create a healthier life, one simple shift at a time. If you're a mama ready to ditch toxins, clean up your family's nutrition, and build daily habits that support your well-being, you're definitely in the right place. Each episode is packed not only with education, but practical tips and tools to help you transform your health in your home without that feeling of overwhelm. So let's take this journey together to create a thriving, low-tox home for you and your family. If you're ready, say, I am ready. Now let's get into this episode.